Okay. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking out the time to join the webinar this evening. We are discussing a topic that is not commonly discussed in the cybersecurity industry. You could go to multiple security conferences, and this topic would never make it onto the agenda, partly because most people it doesn't even register that it should be something that we call out and we look into a little bit more deeper. When I initially met Sarfaraz, who will introduce himself momentarily, he said something very profound to me. He said to me, Grant, most SAP people don't understand cybersecurity, and most cybersecurity people don't truly understand SAP. And I can resonate because as a cybersecurity person, I can admit that I probably do not understand the inner workings of SAP as much as I should. So on that note, I want to hand over to Sarfaraz and maybe just start by giving us an introduction, who you are, what you do, what qualifies you to speak on this topic, and then delve into why is it important that we take note and we look at this, and how should we start shaping our security programs to really make sure that from a SAP perspective, any cybersecurity risks and threats is contained, is mitigated, and is planned for. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grant. I'm going to share my screen as well. Yeah, just real quick. Well, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. And the purpose, as Grant mentioned, is to create awareness about cybersecurity for SAP, which is currently a missing item. A quick introduction about myself. I have about 20 years of SAP background, SAP technical background. I have about 6-7 years of SAP cybersecurity in particular. I've worked in various different verticals in Department of Defense, US Army, DLA, Navy, and State of California, aerospace. I work for NASA, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, General Atomics, and many other companies, as you can see listed here. I've provided them services for enterprise application SAP and or cybersecurity and in combination. So I do have all the right credentials. I have 7 SAP certifications. I have cybersecurity certifications as well as cloud certification, because everything is essentially coming in through the cloud. So having said that about my introduction, I just want to bring a little bit more insight about what SAP is for the people who are not aware of what SAP is or what role SAP plays for the company. So basically, SAP is the heartbeat of any business, any large business. It's the operational backbone. All parts of the company, like financial accounting, controlling, material management, cost accounting, human resources, everything is integrated into one platform, and that platform drives the whole business. You may hear about other applications other than SAP. They are peripherals application, but they are not the primary application in SAP. Basically, when it comes to SAP, if SAP goes down, the business stops for any company. And just a little bit into more the reason for this call and this webinar, and thanks, Grant, for believing in me, what agenda I was pushing forward. Which one of the challenges that I face in this area is that even though we know SAP is the primary application for most companies, government agencies, the CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officers of those companies, they are often not aware that they even have SAP to begin with in their company. And let's say if they do know they have SAP, they often respond that, yes, we have it covered. We have cybersecurity team. We have a very extensive SOC, and they're a very large company, and they have SAP fully covered in the cybersecurity area. So then the next question comes: if SAP is covered in this, this is where they're mistaking their application layer cybersecurity, thinking that SAP cybersecurity is covered under the application layer cybersecurity, which is not the case. Then my next questioning starts asking them, okay, SAP cybersecurity is a distinct discipline from application layer cybersecurity, and then ask them a few questions about it. And that's where I'm able to sell them what I'm talking about, to get them to come to the same point as I am, that it is missing. And why is it missing? Let's quickly, I'm going to spend a few minutes on that, because it's very important to understand what are the consequences of this neglect. So basically, my goal with this webinar for people who don't know what they don't know, to at least they know what they don't know, and what are the consequences of not knowing that. So these are some of the attacks among many which were reported. NVIDIA had attack, USIS, recon vulnerability, 10K Blaze exploit, and ONAPSIS report. I want to get a little bit more into it more. NVIDIA basically has a website, nvcare.nvidia.com. That was a NetWeaver vulnerability. Basically, there was a patch SAP had released that NVIDIA had mistaken and not applied that patch in time. As a result, vulnerability happened by a hacker from nickname Finger from China. So it was able to identify that vulnerability and exploit it. Another one happened with USIS, United States Investigation Services. That's a government agencies even. So that's again Chinese-sponsored hacker found this vulnerability and attacked the SAP software. So basically, he was able to break into SAP via third-party software. There are add-ons on SAP of third-party. So they broke in through third-party, and they were able to steal records of federal employees and contractors, as well as the classified intelligence. So that's a pretty serious breach from SAP. Again, here you have cybersecurity for the application layer, but from the SAP side, you are wide open. Another one is SAP recon vulnerability. It's a critical security flaw discovered in SAP, specifically in the SAP NetWeaver application area. So there's a specific number as well I can provide. But basically, attackers were able to gain full control of SAP system. They were able to potentially leading to access to all unauthorized access. They did the data theft of KPIs and disruption of critical business operations. And similarly, another one is a 10K Blaze exploit. Basically, 90% of the SAP systems were exposed to this breach back in the days through ONAPSIS identification. Again, these were high-risk exploits to a point. They were classified as a high risk, and they led to disclosure of requirements to U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissions in annual financial reporting. So there are a lot of exploits possible through SAP, and as we know, there's no destination to that. It's a journey. We have to embark as a day goes by, new vulnerability come, new updates and patches come. As a result, new possibilities of attack happen. So you have to really stay up on top of the game with respect to securing SAP. Here's a list of some of the companies I have in the GCC area. I know it's a different area than South Africa, but I will have a list for South Africa as well, like Emirates Airline, Emirates National Oil Company, Emaar Properties, Dubai Electric and Water Authority. As you name it, goes on and on. All the main top government agencies, they use that, and the main infrastructure thing uses that. And also in Saudi Arabia, ministries and NEOM project we talked about, Jasara and Saudi Industrial Development Company. All these, Abu Dhabi is also main player over there, and Qatar, as you can see. Any questions so far, guys? Am I going too fast?
There's no hands up at this point, so I think you can get straight into the detail.
Okay. Sure. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about why is it important for cybersecurity for SAP. So SAP has SAP basically announces periodically. It's called patch day. So they come up with the latest patches, sensitive patches that need to be applied. Again, SAP has support pack. They have different types of patches, but I'm talking specifically related to security and cybersecurity within SAP. So having said that, 1 second. Apologies. So basically, there are sensitive transactions within SAP. So this is where it distinguishes from a cybersecurity application SOC analyst to SAP cybersecurity SOC analyst. So there are SAP-specific transactions related to user maintenance, user information system, role maintenance, system tracing, security audit logs, object navigator, table maintenance, data browser, personal action, ABAP editors, and system logs, transport management system. That's how you move the changes across SAP landscape. And then the central user administration. So a whole lot of sensitive transactions there are within SAP, which are cyber in nature, and there has to be a cyber posture applied to those. Similarly to the transactions, there are also RFCs within SAP, which are sensitive in natures. There are a whole set of different RFCs related to reading data from SAP and pinging data and function interfaces and trusted system and read reports, RFC. So they have to have control in place. And similarly on that side, go ahead.
Apologies, Sarfaraz. Tell me, are you sharing? Are you speaking to a specific slide right now?
No, I'm not sharing specific slide on
Oh,
this.
okay, perfect.
I just have
no, that's fine. Thank you. You can continue. Apologies.
Sure, no worries, no worries. And then similarly, just like sensitive transactions, sensitive RFC, there are sensitive programs as well, you know, that have within SAP that needs to have a cyber posture in place. And we are totally missing on those items in most of the companies. So what happens typically in an SAP shop, and I come from very large SAP, world's biggest government agencies implementation of SAP, their cyber posture for SAP, I'm talking from their experience. So, okay, even if they have identified they need to have a cyber posture for SAP, then the next challenge comes, how that is handled. So there's a SAP team, does the SAP administration, SAP monitoring they do. Then there's a SAP security team, which is related to SAP security. Again, don't mistake SAP security with SAP cybersecurity, they're different things. And then it comes SAP cybersecurity. And then it comes cybersecurity for the application within the company, the SOC, and the whole area over there. So a lot of time, because of there's no clear distinction from within SAP, when there's awareness that yes, there needs to have SAP cybersecurity, then all these teams among them, they keep colliding with each other, pushing the ball on the other side that, hey, this is cyber in nature, no, this is SAP security in nature, SAP cybersecurity in nature, or this is SAP administration in nature. So I've dealt in very large companies with the exact same dilemma again and again, and it was quite difficult to navigate to the right direction. So as a result, I think to address these, besides having to have a clearly defined incident response plan for an incident and an anomaly which is cyber in nature from within SAP, if it were to occur, right, recon attack or 10K blaze attack happen, what measures to take immediately? What will be the action number one you take? So defining that includes escalation process, having standard operating procedures for those which are aligned with SAP is very much important. And also it's very important to make sure you distinguish what alerts and incidents from within SAP you will classify as cyber in nature. You know, you can go ahead and buy tools like Splunk and Synapsys. They provide monitoring for they're excellent SIM dashboard tools, but the challenge is they provide everything. Again, you have the same dilemma, how you distinguish what is cybersecurity, what is non-cybersecurity. And I faced that dilemma myself. I had Splunk and Synapsys in my company because we had a lot of money, so we just had those tools fully implemented. But again, I had access of 10,000 alerts per SAP landscape on a daily basis. That as a cyber officer, it would take me months to get to one of them from there. So having even those expensive tools, the first thing is awareness of what within SAP, what alerts you want to monitor, what threshold they should be, what frequency should be, and there are different tiers within SAP. There's a non-prod tier and prod tier. Non-prod tiers as dev, QA, sandbox, and then prod tier, post-production tier. So all these tiers, they have different importance within the landscape. They are not less important because you take often refresh from production to non-production system. So non-prod system are just as important to be cyberly secured, which is another anomaly that I've noticed in many companies that the focus is pretty much on production, not on non-production. And having that plan in place is very important. And that's the awareness I'm trying to create within the SAP implemented companies. And I'm talking again from very large SAP implementation facing this problem today as of now. Any questions so far? I know I've been talking away.
No answer for Sarfaraz, so you can continue.
Sure. So that's pretty much I have that I wanted to share about. Again, in terms of how addressing it, you know, make sure that we follow a NIST-based style framework when it comes to addressing those anomalies within SAP, and need to make sure we have governance, risk management, and compliance aspect accounted for within the NIST framework that we are following. There's no NIST-based framework currently exists for SAP, and I'm currently working with NIST, trying to create that awareness as well, to have a separate chapter for SAP. But you can still follow NIST CSF framework, which is somewhat along the lines, but doesn't have specific SAP specific parameters, which you have to come up with your own SAP technical team. And also need to have in your SOC, you need to have SAP expert people available so they can analyze, they understand the importance of an anomaly that occurred and take the right actions and apply the right IRPs. Another one is SAP. Prepare your SAP system. It can integrate with any SIM like Splunk, Synapses, or SAP ETD. Just by virtue of buying these tools will not prepare you to have most effective outcome using these tools. So this configuration needs to be done beforehand. You need to define standard operating procedure, need to define all IRPs. I have a list of almost 30 to 35 IRPs can be defined within SAP area, that you're ready when those specific anomalies come, what actions to take and what escalation protocols to follow within the framework, response framework.
Sarfaraz,
and then yes.
One question on that IRPs, right? So you say you've got a list of 32 IRPs.
Yes.
Would that be very specific use cases that you are referring to?
They are specific to use cases as known. So they will grow with time, over a period of time, because for example, data breach response, or what actions to take, or unauthorized access response, denial of service attack response. Another example, which is very common, I've seen happening, self-role elevation. So if you have certain privileges within SAP, you elevated your own role or somebody else's role, and you were not supposed to. If these kind of anomalies happen, and these are actual practical anomalies that I've experienced, what action to take immediately in that case? Again, there was no clear guidance. Sometimes it is a legitimate, sometimes it's not legitimate based on certain tickets were open. Okay, to ignore certain, in some cases to take action, to put investigation in. So these all change. These are all variables. These are not constants. But initially to start with a list of those, so at least you have a starting framework, and then each company have their own set of experiences and tolerance. For example, certain actions like SAP All and SAP New, based on SAP best practice, it should not be given. This is a role that widely opens your access within SAP. So SAP's best practice doesn't suggest giving it to users in any SAP system for that matter, even in non-prod system. But obviously, you're being really careful in non-prod system, development system, the admin team does end up in getting or permutations of that. But in production system, for example, you are never to give that. But I have worked in very large, highly sensitive government agencies where users are given SAP or SAP New, and it's an acceptable thing within the company. So that's an anomaly that they are going with. So we need to define our security posture based on that, because I, as a security, I cannot change that. This is how the business is conducted there. Then I have to change my IRPs to reflect accordingly. But that IRP will not work for some other agency or some other organization.
Sarfaraz, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So tell me, hypothetically speaking, right, we've got SAP implemented in the organization. It's the backbone of most of our business processes. We've implemented the SAP security baseline standards. Where do we start? What else is missing? What should we be looking for? And specifically, differentiate between cybersecurity concerns and fraud concerns, or are you viewing these two things as one? Transactional level fraud versus cybersecurity threats.
Okay, so basically, to start this, you need to first look at what is your monitoring tree looks like. What are the areas within you're addressing. Then carefully determine which of those particular type of alerts and incidents that you're monitoring are cyber in nature. And then you need to implement almost like a separate SOC, which is responsible for SAP specific anomalies, because the SOC typically have no expertise in SAP, zero expertise, yet they might be monitoring SAP alert, but they don't know what to do with SAP. But you gotta have separate SOC or a division of SOC or a section of SOC related to SAP. And then you identify the tool you want to use as a SIM dashboard, like Splunk, Synapsys, or some other monitoring tool you're using. Make sure those are integrated. Make sure you know what to monitor, and make sure what to respond and what to follow when anomaly does occur. So and that includes the tiers, as I mentioned earlier, and the tiers, and they're based on the importance of those tiers to take certain actions. And I'm sorry, I don't think I answered your question fully. What was the other question, Grant?
No, I said obviously in the SAP world, you have cybersecurity threats specific to the cyber layer, and then you've got transactional level fraud within the application itself, people approving payments that shouldn't be doing it. Are you seeing those two things as intertwined, or do you view them as separate concerns?
They're very much intertwined, actually. They're very much, this is why the confusion happens within that area. That is the reason. So yes, they're very much intertwined, like, when it comes to, for example, audit and compliance, personnel actions, security related configuration, to determine what you consider as a SAP security and what is SAP cybersecurity, to have that distinction, what has a global impact on the company, or this is specific to a specific action. They're very much intertwined, and that's the challenge comes. So there might be an overlap. There will be an overlap, but then to have, the goal is to create as less overlap as possible. So cybersecurity area of SAP is refined.
And Sarfaraz, you operating on a global scale, you obviously see organizations across the globe, right? Are you seeing a shift to fraud monitoring happening in the cyber SOC, or distinctly different? I can speak from the organization that I represent. We've got a cyber team, we've got a fraud team, and we've got a physical security team, and we kind of now looking at converging it, right? But historically, it's always been separate. Are you seeing that shift where fraud is moving into the cyberspace, or not really?
Actually, fraud team, there's no distinction, at least in the companies I've worked as a cyber officer. For SAP application in particular, but the SOC analyst who is an SAP SME, does the investigation, does the forensics of the alert, and if it deemed to be it's fraudulent, like it's a nefarious activity, it's a deliberate attempt to compromise the system, then I would go ahead and refer them for disciplinary action or investigations, within the agency.
Right. Tell me one more question from me, then I'll open up to the floor as well. Outside of the SAP security baseline standards and best practices, right? Are there any other industry maturity frameworks or standards you can recommend that's specific to SAP security, but not necessarily from SAP?
Yeah, so all the standards, like the regulations, compliance and regulations, HIPAA and GDPR and all those, they're all there in terms of how the information should be handled and everything. In terms of NIST have chapters specific to other areas, but is not dictating based on SAP. SAP in particular has set of alerts that can be activated, parameters that can be activated. They're not activated by default, that can be activated, and the ones that are activated, what frequency they should happen for it to be an alert, or what threshold they should trigger at what level, and for what tiers. So all that is not part of any framework, and that's what the framework that I'm working on, and I'm in talks with NIST COE right now, to have that chapter so that it can be standardized.
Understood.
So we don't have that confusion. My goal with this is to take the confusion out about cybersecurity for SAP.
No, thank you. I think at this point, if I could open the floor, anybody who's got a question, you could raise your hand and then you could pose the question. For any thoughts on the topic, what are you seeing? Are you finding this consensus that, we started off saying there's a belief that most cybersecurity people don't fully understand the inner workings of SAP security. And a lot of SAP security professionals do not truly appreciate and understand cybersecurity. Your thoughts on that? Are you finding that to be the case in your circle that you move in?
I think definitely. I think there has been a big shift in the past. We have, we have seen a big improvement in our sort of SAP teams around cybersecurity. I think in the past, because I think SAP in most organizations is a old school application. It's been there for a long time. It's sort of ran on sort of P-series hardware and back in the old days, and kind of everything was focused around keeping the application up at all costs, and changes were kept to a minimum, and security patching was non-existent. And I think we have seen a big shift in that in the right direction over the last little while. I think certainly things like 10K Blaze and stuff that have come out have raised awareness, which I think has been great for everybody. They understand now that you actually do have to patch this thing. It's like they understand doing it on their Windows desktop, but they don't want to touch the SAP system. So I think that has been cool. I think you're absolutely right. There is a massive gap between the guys who do kind of the SAP stuff and knowing the cybersecurity thing. I think there is, and vice versa. Certainly our security team is pretty clueless when it comes to SAP. And I think one of the other big challenges that we have, and I don't know if everyone else has it here, but one of the other big challenges that we have is that everything you do in SAP costs millions. You cannot integrate, like we've really struggled getting our SAP logs into C, because everything costs a fortune to do with SAP. And so and we tried to get it into Sentinel, we've tried to get it into various other things, and it's just everything it's like they think this is an enterprise application, so you must have many millions of dollars to spend if you're running SAP, and it's just not true. And I think that's the challenge that we face, is how do we get SAP at the same level of monitoring and the same level of sort of the processes and stuff we've got in place for other systems, but at a cost that's reasonable, because it isn't reasonable. We really are struggling with that at the moment. So I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Sure. No, that's a really good point. And obviously you're coming from your practical experience into this, and that's exactly my take on that as well. Just on that note, one example of my very recent, one of the projects I'm doing SAP, not cybersecurity at all, purely SAP. And a task was given to me by my VP to open up SAP certain ports and IP addresses for SAP Marketplace. And I'm not cybersecurity for SAP. I'm an SAP individual, right? Doing those services for them. And I did bring it to them. Hey, you're asking me to perform. This really should be handled by the cybersecurity team. And they said, just go ahead and do it. And this company have patient information. It has student information. They are governed under HIPAA laws. And the cyber posture is so poor. If I, as an SAP person, I go in and open up certain IPs, which I should not be opening, and I do allow all as compared to restricted allow, that can widely open the SAP system just with one little action of mine, which is not change control or anything of that nature. So the cyber posture, I believe, in a lot of companies today in SAP, yes, they have made a big deal of progress. There are a lot of expensive tools out there, a lot of expensive consulting around it to implement those, but they're truly not achieving that. And my quest is to somehow fill in that gap. To before you get to those expensive tools, before you get to there, you should first improve what you already have before you get that far. And I think that can be achieved. It's just a matter of having that awareness.
Cool. Thank you, Sarfaraz. Thank you, Duncan, for that question. I particularly encountered the same thing. I tried to get SAP logs into Sentinel, and they've got connectors, but there's costs all around to consider. And then suddenly it just doesn't become feasible. It's very difficult to justify. So thank you for raising that. Any other thoughts from the delegates on the call?
Maybe I can ask you guys a question. If that's
you can ask.
Yeah. So in terms of SAP, I understand you must have some kind of SAP exposure or SAP SAP footprint. What's your take is when it comes to, I understand Duncan has expressed his opinion about that. Do you feel that there is a need for a specific cyber security area for SAP, or you think your current application layer cybersecurity is sufficing the need for cyber for SAP?
I'll maybe share my thoughts on that, Sarfaraz. I've been in cybersecurity for a good number of years, and there's lots of domains within cyber that I understand fairly well. And SAP is not one of those domains, right? So I've got a surface level understanding, the normal baseline standards are in access control, segmentation, or separation of duties. But beyond that, if you're talking, SIDs and transaction level considerations, I don't have that depth of understanding. And we've got people in our organization who's got that depth, but they're not sitting in a cybersecurity team. So I do believe there is a need to build a competence, or at least have an industry framework that's easy enough for cybersecurity people to apply to it, to increase the posture of it, because obviously it's quite a complex system. And with complexity, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anybody else who's willing to share their thoughts on it. I know Bernard on the call is a virtual CISO, so he's got insight into several different organizations. I'm not sure what his take is on it.
I can share a thought quick while we wait for Bernard. I don't know if he's just saying something like that.
Your thoughts, Duncan?
I don't remember what they were. Oh yeah. So I mean, I saw on one of your previous slides there was a line that said, if SAP stops, the business stops. And I think that for most companies is very true. And so from a cybersecurity perspective, because Grant, we don't have all the transaction IDs and all the types of things that you can do, and from a fraud perspective and the stuff that can go wrong inside of that space, compared to the risk of SAP being unavailable, it is negligible. So the risk of SAP being unavailable for business function for the business to actually go, we are very focused on availability. So the availability risk around SAP is really where we focus the majority of our cybersecurity in the SAP space, because that is what is by far our biggest risk. If we were to have a cyber attack against SAP that took it down, we'd be in a lot of trouble. And so we really do make sure that is above all where we focus all our budget, all our thoughts, all our resources. Everything we have to do with SAP security is focused on that. Obviously we do due diligence and the stuff we have to do for the confidentiality stuff, but generally speaking, availability is by far the biggest priority for us.
Sure. One thing is availability, and one other is, even while it's being available, it may have anomalies, right? So where you bring the availability down yourself because of certain actions have happened. So you may have an insider worm in there, and then you have SAP still up and running. So availability, keeping SAP lights up and running is one thing. Another thing is keeping it off from cyber exposure, keeping it current with SAP patches and making sure accounting for all these, there's a patch day, notes are applied, patches are applied, and of all the KVNs that are coming up from SAP to make sure staying on top of that, to cover all the transaction sensitive RFCs and programs and whatnot.
No, thank you. I don't know if Bernard has sorted out his mic yet.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm just checking with Bernard if he's online.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I think Bernard must be having some technical challenges. Anybody else on the call who's willing to share their thoughts or maybe have a question or two? Okay. No, Sarfaraz, I don't think there are any more questions. So I think if in conclusion, right, if you could leave us with, one thing that we should take away from this session, what would that be? What's the one thing that we should walk away here with on a new perspective?
Sure. So one thing, or really the quest here is as well, is to create an awareness of, from thinking that it's covered, which is a state of not knowing what you don't know. It's a blessing in disguise, to knowing what you don't know, that there is an area of SAP cybersecurity which needs a cyber attention. So that's one thing I emphasize to the companies, and that's what I mentioned when I talk to CISOs of different companies. Very first response I get, we got it covered. We have SAP cybersecurity. We have very strong cyber posture. We have application team. But when it comes to technicality of SAP, that's where some challenges come. So that's the awareness I'm trying to create.
No, thank you, Sarfaraz. And I think that is part of the reason. Oh, Bernard, your hand is up. You're welcome to talk.
I think you may be having a mic issue.
Must be. Okay, but Bernard, you can jump in anytime if you can, and we're still online. I think, Sarfaraz, one of the reasons why I particularly wanted to bring this topic to the forefront is it's not an extremely popular topic to bring up in cybersecurity. Like I said, I attended 15, 20 conferences last year, and this wasn't on the agenda once. So we want to shine a light on the unknowns, like you said, right? So now at least we walk away here. My takeaway is there are things within SAP that require security understanding and mitigation that I don't even know of, and I need to go and work on that. So for me, that was why we did this, and I thank you for that. Let me just admit Bernard. Let's give it one last try. Is Bernard with us?
Can you hear me?
Bernard is the first.
Now we can hear you.
Now.
Now you can hear me. Fantastic. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really thankful for this webinar. I'm one of those people that Grant was referring to at the very beginning. So we've had an insane challenge. Even when I was with businesses that were adopting SAP, the security guys were not part of the party. We had no clue what we're supposed to plug in and where the key points were from our perspective, and over time, I've actually been one of the advocates for, especially for this webinar, because my question was always around exactly what we're talking about. What's the key thing that I can pull out with minimum level of stress? Because all of my cybersecurity guys have no clue where they're supposed to be pulling and what they want to actually see. It becomes so critical for us because that sort of framework doesn't exist. It's a black spot,
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah. So I don't know if you like maybe just a couple of top things that I need to make sure that we are emphasizing, or maybe even from now, from this awareness perspective, this is what we're supposed to be looking at, guys. If we can't see it, then we need to dig deeper.
Sure. So, in that capacity, there are different types of logging happens. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get more technical, but there are different types of logging happens within SAP. There's security audit logging, system logs, as we know, HTTPS logs,
Yes.
database logs, application logs, change document logs. And they have certain types of alerts, and you need to activate certain parameters to activate those logging for those alerts. Having to that's what the framework I'm currently working on as well, and that's what I'm promoting with NIST COE as well, to have a set of those parameters that are going to be your cyber-related SAP alerts that you'll be looking for. And around those, to define IRPs. If those alerts were to come up red, what actions to take. Yes, we may have anomalies happening outside of this as well, but we only monitor what we monitor, right? Even if you have Splunk or Synapses, it will only trigger alert based on what you configure in it for it to do. So there isn't anything different from that matter. You can use SAP CCMS for that matter quite effectively. You can use SAP Solution Manager. You can centralize monitoring there. You necessarily don't need to have Splunk or Synapses, but Splunk or Synapses makes it easier. but then you need to have Splunk and Access Consulting to integrate to get it to work. They're awesome tools. I'm talking to Splunk as well, actually, in terms of what I'm working on to integrate some of that. So goal is really to have a framework that identifies all parameter thresholds that you're going to monitor, has all the IRPs, all the SOPs, and then based on that, then you can define what is important for your company, what is not, and you can have a good solid cyber posture. I can share something if it's okay with you real quick.
Yeah. Okay, that would be very helpful, because I also was about to follow up exactly what you said, speaking around the integrations. You know, a lot of the time we actually don't know where the starting point is. We're looking for step one, and we know where the final goal is, but the step one was the issue. So this structure is what I really look forward to, something that we can also start speaking to other CISOs about, you know.
Sure. Actually, just to let you know, I was at a convention. I was talking to the Minister of Cybersecurity. I actually kind of challenged him, mentioning that, you know, between all the cybersecurity companies that are there on the floor, not one company is addressing enterprise layer cybersecurity within that, in that capacity. So that got his attention, and, you know, got to talk to him more, and then talk to his main person. And I've been working with him to, you know, to promote that forward. That really truly is a gap right now. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done within SAP. Let me share this with you, see if this makes any sense. Sorry, 1 second. Let me know when you see my screen.
Yes, can see it.
This is a dashboard that I'm working on. This dashboard is driven based on the framework that I internally defined for SAP. So this is just a demo here. This is not the actual product. You know. So this covers like security posture, total score. So if you look at it, this is based on the areas of NIST core pillars like identification, protection, detection, response, recovering, and governance. And it covers, from SAP perspective, the networking component, the presentation tier, includes, and then within the application tier, I know it might be very small for you to see. You can see there are sensitive transactions mentioned here, SAP transactions, and, you know, it has a heat map based on that, and sensitive RFCs, sensitive programs. So these are kind of like a frameworkish sort of thing. And then database tier, database again in SAP is HANA, as you know, is a columnar data. It's a different type of database than we are all familiar with from you know, earlier on days. So it's a completely different set of challenges that HANA database brings in. It's in-memory data, being in-memory database. So we can get into more details about all this. When it comes to incident categories, these are like 7-8 areas of my tool. So it covers the data breaches, denial of services, because you can exhaust resources, for example, preventing legitimate access happening within SAP. These kind of attacks can happen within SAP. It covers them. It has alert categories. These are the threat vectors that, you know, within SAP. So I'm trying to cover as best as possible, and I'm gonna carve out still some more noise to make it very specific to cyber within SAP. And these are all the IRPs I was talking about: data breach response, malware and ransomware response. These are all the incident response plans. And then, of course, the very important part, I think, is the patching and vulnerability patching. That's where, so these are the latest patches available, which are patched, which are not patched, for which system. It distinguishes between, you know, the different tiers here as well: dev, QO, production, how many are patched, how many not patched, when was the last patched. It reads all the information, displays here, and it reads directly from SAP side for SAP patch day. So this is the kind of thing I'm trying to get, you know, something in place for SAP. But other than, until there, to follow a frameworkish kind of approach to get there. So if you need further help, you know, I can guide you guys. You know, I can lead you guys to what you can do.
100%. We'll definitely take you up on that. I also wanted my last question. Sorry, my last question. Do you think that there's merit in, for example, while I'm building my cybersecurity team, to actually get a SAP specialist to who I can blend with cyber to be specific to this ERP? I mean, based on what Duncan said, this is a critical system. The whole business is riding on this. Do you think that there's merit to make sure that we have a dedicated resource within a team, depending on company size?
Without any doubt, absolutely. This is where the challenge comes. And even so, if you have SAP resource who has cyber background, will augment his skills. If his skills are augmented with cyber as well, will be the most ideal candidate. But certainly, yes, because see that SAP person has to have a mindset of cybersecurity. A lot of SAP administrator, SAP security people I talk to, their mindset is SAP, right? But they're not thinking from cyber perspective of SAP. So you need a person who is SAP expert and has awareness of cybersecurity. Perhaps maybe they can take some cybersecurity courses, some certifications to get them up to speed with that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And again, if you have any further questions, it'll be my honor to help you guys out, guide you guys if anything. By all means, please reach out for that.
Yeah. Sarfaraz, no, I think on that note, I want to say thank you very much for your time, shedding light on the unknown unknowns. As you can see by the types of questions, it really is a challenge for us. So thank you for that. And I know that when I initially met you, I could sense that you've got deep expertise in this field, and hence I wanted to bring you into this forum. To the participants on the call, connect with Sarfaraz on LinkedIn, ask questions. I think there's expertise, there's a willingness to assist. So feel free to engage. And thank you for taking time out of your busy week evening to join this webinar. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you, Grant, for this arranging this, and thank you for amazing question and sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot.
Thank you all. Keep well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.